Hello everybody, it's Tanya and welcome to today's video. Today's video is going to be a book review and I continue to broaden my horizons, and today I want to introduce to you this book. A Palace in the Old Village by a Moroccan writer, Tahar Ben Jelloun. I had a great time reading this book. It's a very quiet book. It's a very deeply thought book. It's very meditative. It kind of lulls you into its quiet and peaceful and slowly moving prose, and it's a very pleasant reading experience. You can just reread chapters just because of the language and how beautifully it is translated. It's translated from French, and just the prose itself. But also it raises a lot of really interesting and important questions and topics, such as immigration, experience of immigrants in Europe, family, belonging, adapting to a new world, finding your place in new situations in your life, relationship between parents and children, relationship between a human and a country, relationship between a human in his own country and a new country where he just arrived. So it packs a lot, even though it's so short, but I think that it's actually a very effective novel and it definitely deserves your attention. So let's start what this book is about. The main character is Mohammed. Now Mohammed is in his 60s. When he was young, when he was 20, he agreed to go and work in France, and he became an immigrant in France. He arrived to Paris, and for the following 40 years he worked at an auto assembly line at Renault. Mohammed is a very hard-working man. He enjoyed his work. He likes being useful. He likes earning money with his hard work. He hates easy money. He believes that you need to work hard, you need to be useful, you need to be a functioning part of society, and that's what brings joy to him, that's what brings peace to him. And he really enjoyed his quiet everyday routine of waking up at 5 a.m, getting his lunch, getting on a bus, going to his factory. He was an exemplary worker. Everybody respected him, and he always knew that whenever he took a holiday, whenever he took a vacation, he always knew that the plant wasn't as productive and wasn't as reliable as it could be if he was there. So he really felt that he belonged there. He quite loved his job, but now it's time for him to retire. And that's when Mohammed is faced with life, and he looks at his own life, he looks back on his life, and he looks forward on his life as to what is he to do now, what can he do now, because he still has power, he still has energy, he still has things to offer to this world, and retirement for him is something dreadful. He doesn't know what is he supposed to do now. And so this novel is a lot about remembering his youth, but also looking around at people around him and how they adopted to life in France, how they adopted to their retirement, and how this new life has affected other Moroccan families, not just his. When he was 20 and it was his first trip to France, when he has just left his village to go and work in France, there was a really beautiful description of how he felt, how it felt to him to be moving to a completely different country. So I want to read you this part. He couldn't digest the fact that he would not find the tribe waiting for him, the family, the native countryside that was a part of his body and whole being. He sensed that something was leaving him, that the farther the train went, the smaller his village shrank, and would go on shrinking until it disappeared. When he thought about his family, their image became blurred. He didn't realize that he was passing from one time to another, one life to another. He was changing centuries, countries, customs. He felt as if his head were too small to deal with all that, and he paced like a caged animal. Too many new and unexpected things, too many changes. So yeah, in this trip he really was traveling from one century to another, from one time to another, and his life, his whole life, he was living in between two very different worlds. The first world was the world of his home village in Morocco, a community that is very much family oriented, that is very much communal living oriented, where this idea of self and idea of me doesn't really exist, the way I understood it from this book, the way I felt it personally. The idea of self and the idea of me as a separate individual doesn't really exist in this world. People live together, the life conditions are very harsh, nothing grows, the sun is scorching, there is very little water, it's a small village, there is no electricity, people live in poverty, and only living together, living as a community, helps these people to survive. Traditions are passed from generation to generation. People are not really educated, they have very small and very narrow outlook on life. It pretty much feels to them that the world behind the borders of their own village is something unreal, something that doesn't exist. They only know their village. So it's this small, very tightly knit community of people, and family is of utmost importance. Family is above all. Family doesn't argue, family doesn't fight. There was an episode when Muhammad is talking to his older son, and he tells that his nephew built a house on a piece of Muhammad's land without asking for permission, without anything, and he was like, oh well, it's family, it happens, it's okay. But his son cannot understand it. His son is like, no, it's your land, you need to ask him to leave, you need to get your land back. For Muhammad it's unthinkable, because it's his nephew, it's his family, and there can be no conflicts in the family, there should be no conflicts in the family. Nobody will even understand if he will raise the question, if he will raise the issue. Yeah, family is above all. I think the brightest example for me personally of this absence of self was a conversation between Muhammad and his daughter Jamila. Jamila was already of age, and she wanted to get married to a Christian Italian boy, and she tells to her father, I am in love. For her father, his daughter marrying to a Christian is unthinkable, it's shameful, and he's devastated, and he doesn't really understand the meaning of I am in love. What does it mean to be in love? He doesn't know, because in his life, when he was young, the way he married, he didn't marry because he was in love with his wife. He married because family decided so. His wife is his distant relative, and it was decided that yeah, they will get married one day, and there wasn't a question of love, there wasn't a question of connection to each other, and I don't think that there is the connection, because later in the novel Muhammad tries to remember a single time he had a love with his wife, and he didn't. But at the same time, it doesn't have that their family is not functioning. Their family is actually great. He is a great dad, his wife is a great mother and a great wife, and they have 4 children together. So that's an example of how family needs to be for Muhammad. And on the other side, he sees this idea of I am in love, and then he looks at French life and how French people live, not only French, European people in general, how they marry because they are in love, as they say, but then a few years later they divorce and they say oh well, we didn't match together, and for Muhammad that's unthinkable, that's completely unthinkable. For him, marriage is forever. For him, marriage is for the whole life, and that's why he always believes that your parents know better what person you ought to marry, what person would be a better partner for a lifelong marriage. But that's the conflict between a person living as part of a community and a person living as a self, as me, and how I feel and what I want, rather than what community want and what is better for the community. I feel like that's the actual conflict between Muhammad and his daughter, because his children grew up in France. They were born in France and they grew up in France, and they speak French. They don't even speak language of their father. He tried to teach them, but they were not interested, and they speak French to him, and he is not really interested in learning French, and he knows the basics, but he refuses to learn more. The other, continuing with France, with the second world that Muhammad is living in, that's the world all of us know, the European world, that is utterly and completely different from that of the world of a Moroccan village, of a remote Moroccan village. The thing that strikes Muhammad the most is the relationship between people, how detached they are, how people are all separate from each other, even parents and children. There was an incident in 2003 in summer that struck Muhammad. He was repulsed, he was taken completely aback, and he was completely shocked, but yeah, he was completely repulsed with what he learned. So in 2003, you know it better than me probably, there was a heat wave, because in this book there are notes, and in this novel he mentions a lot of real life events, so this is one of them. So a heat wave, because it was very unexpected and the city and the country as a whole was not prepared for this heat wave, 11,435 people were reported dead, and many of them were elderly. At that time, majority of the population of the country was on vacation, and many bodies remained unclaimed for weeks because the family still was on vacation. And when Muhammad learned about this news and about this tragedy, he was completely repulsed with how young people treated their elders and their parents and their grandparents, how he saw a complete absence of care, complete absence of respect of younger generation towards the older generation. And he was completely repulsed by that, because that would never happen in Morocco. An elderly person would never die alone. An elderly person would be taken care of by the family, by the children, by the grandchildren. I guess it shouldn't come as a surprise to you that Muhammad completely refuses to assimilate. He refuses to accept anything from the French culture. He refuses to become even a little bit to become a part of this society. He refuses to learn the language. He learned the pure basics, but he doesn't want to learn anything else. It is not to say that he is ungrateful. He is grateful to the country for the opportunity to work and for the opportunity to earn money. But he always remembers and he always sees how he is not a part of this place, how he is not a part of this culture, and he doesn't even want to become a part of it because the selfishness of this culture repulses him. As you could guess, Muhammad is very stubborn. He is like a nut that you cannot crack. He remains closed and he continues living in his tiny, small world inside of him. He always carries with him Quran. Quran is the most prized possession. Quran is the epitome of who he is. He always says that first of all he is a Muslim, and only then he is a Moroccan. He memorized Quran, but he cannot discuss it, he cannot interpret it, he cannot have a conversation on different interpretations of different sutras, which he genuinely very much would like to be able to do, because he has utmost respect and love for his religion and for his culture. But he is uneducated, he is literate, but he is uneducated, and he always envies his children. I mean, with love and with good feeling, that they are able to get education, that they are able to learn and go to school. And he's a great father. Great father in the sense that he takes the responsibility for his family. He never cheats on his wife. He works hard to provide. And every year he has this small tradition with his children. They go to a stationery shop and they buy everything his children need for the school, and then he helps to put covers on their books, to put covers on their notebooks. But at the same time, even though he does love his children so much, they are not really close. I think another topic that this book raises is the topic of family and relationship in the family, and maybe even bringing up children. Because Muhammad, being the great dad he is, I think it's partly because he's so uneducated, because he comes from a village, from a small village, and because he's so stubborn in his ways. I think probably partly because of that, he very much struggles to establish contact with his kids. He cannot talk to them, they almost don't talk. They exchange some polite words as like hello, some words at the dinner table, but that's about it. He very much struggles to find connection with them, and that's why it's not surprising that his children don't really speak his motherland, his mother tongue, and that they don't really see him as a model for behavior. They see him as a pushover. Even one of his daughters told him that it's very obvious that you are a pushover, which he didn't understand. He was like, why do you think that being just a good, kind person equals to being a pushover? So he completely lost the connection with his children. And the older they got, the more apart from each other they grew. And so now Muhammad is retired. Now he doesn't know what else to do. He is lost. He's terrified of being useless to the society, of having nothing to do. But then, the way he sees it, his God comes to his rescue, comes to his help, and Muhammad gets an idea. Muhammad decides to go back to his village and build a beautiful big house for his whole family, to bring all of his children back to Morocco and live in that Moroccan small village all together, with his children's families and with him, and so all of them would be together. Now it's his new big dream. He goes back to Morocco, he builds the house, and the house becomes, in this novel, becomes the metaphor for his dream. Because just like his dream is completely ungrounded, just like his dream is very outlandish, very unrealistic, so is his house. He puts all of his money into this house, he puts all of his effort, all of his strength, he puts everything he has into this house, but he doesn't really have an idea, he doesn't really have a set plan as to what he wants. He just describes the house as, I want this house to be as big as my heart. That's how he describes it. And the house is, when it's finished, it's the biggest house in the village, and everybody in the village just looks at it as some monster that is so outlandish and so out of place. And the house is all very strange, it has very strange shape. So it's a metaphor for his dream. Just like his dream is out of place, just like his dream is unrealistic and ungrounded in reality, so is the house. The house doesn't belong to this village. His dream doesn't belong to this village and to this world. So do his children. They don't belong to the world of a small Moroccan village because they were born in France. They are French. They're French. They were born in France, they grew up in France, and their outlook on life is French. The fact that he couldn't establish the connection with them, the fact that he didn't care to talk to them, to have a fatherly conversations with them, didn't help, because now his children are just so far away from him in all possible senses of this word. So yeah, it's a book about conflict of generations, of course, but also conflict of cultures, because Muhammad belongs to one culture and his children belong to another culture. And this novel also shows how the place we're born in, the place where we grow up, leaves a mark on us. And you cannot get rid of it. It's ingrained in your DNA. It's who you are. The place where you were born and where you grew up. It stays with you forever. It stays with you forever. It doesn't let you go, and you are part of that place forever, no matter where you go. Just like Muhammad, he went to France, he spent 40 years in France, but he remains a Moroccan villager. The values of the Moroccan village are his premier values, and he refuses to let go of them, and he doesn't accept the French way of life. His children were born in Paris, they were born in Europe, they have the European values, and they refuse to let go of them. They don't understand why should they give up their life to just go to a Moroccan village and obey their father. It's unthinkable for them, it's crazy for them. And they try to explain it to their father, and he doesn't understand them. There is no communication, because in his view, children should obey their father. And it's unthinkable for them as to why don't they. So there is no communication, there is a wall. There is a wall between these two worlds, and they cannot be united. By the end, this book becomes more like a dream. Muhammad starts seeing dreams, he starts wandering in dreams, he starts seeing jinns, he starts seeing these shadows and spirits who talk to him, who scare him, who ask him to leave this place because he doesn't belong. So the narration takes form of magic realism, and it's beautiful like a dream. I really enjoyed very much the last part of this novel. I actually enjoyed the whole novel. I really liked reading Muhammad's experiences in France. There's so many, and he describes experiences of other Moroccan families living around him and working with him, and people have such different experience because people are very different. Muhammad is very set in his ways. Some Moroccans try to assimilate, and some Moroccans have children who also defy their parents, and examples of very different families are shown in this book, and it's all very interesting. It's all very much eye-opening. The ending might seem to some people a little bit strange. I really liked it. I think it's also a beautiful metaphor. It's a beautiful metaphor for time, in my opinion. How past and traditions, and even the most set in stone traditions, even the most persistent traditions, even maybe the most useful traditions and important traditions, but how they inevitably get sucked in the whirl of time, and how the sand of time closes above them forever, how they inevitably disappear, no matter how persistent they are, no matter how important they are. I thought that the ending was a very beautiful metaphor. I really liked it. This book, I truly enjoyed it. I had a great time reading it. It's such a pleasure to read. The prose is so beautiful. The story is simple. It's not anything particularly new. It's not anything particularly groundbreaking. But nevertheless, I do think that it's a very effective and a very successful novel in what it does in describing one person's inner world and inner struggle to adapt to a new way of life, to adapt to constantly changing times and constantly changing situations in his life, and reluctance to adopt to them because he just loves his life the way it is. He loves the traditions, he loves the routine, he gets used to it, and he doesn't want to let it go. He wants to keep it no matter what, and what it eventually does to him. I would highly recommend this novel. I really would highly recommend this novel. The more I talk about it, the more I understand that how much I actually enjoyed it and how much I actually liked it. It's not an optimistic book. It's very far from being optimistic. It's not optimistic at all. It is sad, but it's not depressing, you know. Muhammad, he is not pitying himself, you know. He is not sitting pitying himself. He is a very calm man. There isn't much about his emotions. It's more about him looking around, looking at the world, looking at his life and thinking, what happened? How did it happen that his life became this way? How did it happen that his children slipped away from him? How did it happen that France claimed them? How did it happen that now he is retired and he has to find a new way in life? It's more his recollections and him just thinking about life rather than pitying himself. So it is a sad book, but it's not depressing. I wouldn't say that it's depressing. Yeah, it's more just a man looking back at his life and thinking what happened to him and his family. So yeah, truly enjoyed this novel, would highly recommend it. I hope you give it a try, and if you do give it a try, let me know later what you thought about it. I will be reading more by this author. I have another book by him. I have The Blinding Absence of Light, also by Tahar Benjelloun. Guardian calls him Morocco's greatest living author. So yeah, I will definitely be continuing with his works. So yeah, A Palace in the Old Village, highly recommended. And for now, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a very good day, staying safe, reading good books and enjoying them. And yeah, have a good day. I will see you soon in my next videos. Thank you very much for watching.